It's NHL draft week, and on today's Locked On Predators, we'll talk about the 9 picks the Preds have and look at how successful Nashville has been with those first round picks of the past. Plus, is Natchez to Nashville heating up?
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this episode with a shout out to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everyday listeners who tune in Monday through Friday to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support, and we love that we get to spend just a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I am the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
So on today's show, Emma and I are going to take a look at the 9 picks Nashville has in the 2024 draft, at least as of now. And then we're going to take a closer look at that first round. We're going to share who we drafted in the Locked On mock draft, and we're going to take a look back at how successful the Predators have been with those first round picks of the past. Plus, more rumblings. Is Martin Natchez to Nashville getting real? We're going to dive into all of that in just a moment. But before we do, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right. Happy draft week, Emma. This is like the kickoff of the big summer to-do in hockey. We've got draft week, and then, hey, don't get too comfy because it's free agency. And then we go right into dev camp, and the wheels come off the bus. And for you especially, this is going to be really busy because guess who's going to Vegas?
I do the party hands as if I'm going to have any time to party in Vegas, or as if I'm a partier at all. But I'm excited. It'll be good. I will be at night 1 of the draft. I will be traveling during day 2, or at least attempting to travel, because I'm just praying that I have no issues, or at least like no major travel issues.
I will also say I'm a little worried, Emma, because I went ahead and looked at the weather report for Las Vegas. Please pack sunscreen. It is supposed to be 102 on Friday and 104 on Saturday. So it just seems like you need to make sure you pack sunscreen.
I will say it is for sure. And I do not enjoy being hot, but I mean, it's been pretty dang hot in Nashville this week.
Fair.
And Nashville is humid, and it's been very muggy. And so at least, a dry heat might be kind of nice. Yes. I don't know. Back when I worked in baseball, they sent me to Arizona in July, and it reached the 130s, and I was like, y'all are trying to kill me.
That's insane.
Later that year, they sent me to, this was USA Baseball, they sent me to Indianapolis in January where it was minus 30. And I was like, y'all are seriously trying to kill me. So, it's 102, 104, definitely unpleasant, but I've experienced worse. So
you are hardy. You come from hardy stock. You can take this.
Whether I want to or not.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Well, Nashville is going to be keeping you busy there because, of course, we know they have the 22nd pick overall in round 1. But that just scratches the surface of the picks Barry Trotz is waltzing into the sphere with in his pocket as of now, because, anything can happen. And Barry Trotz has plenty that he can wheel and deal with when it comes to draft picks in 2024 and draft picks in 2025. He was set up to do some shopping with picks if he so desires. 9 picks in the first round. It seems like Nashville is going to be hopping if they keep those picks.
Yeah. It's going to be busy either way, because either you're making that many picks or you're making a lot of trades. And
Right.
so either way, I feel I'm going to have my work cut out for me.
I know when it was here in Nashville, first of all, it was so exciting. I loved when the draft was here in Nashville. And I do think that the NHL enjoyed the draft in Nashville, but it was really exciting. But it is very hectic behind the scenes because you are waiting to do media with the picks, but you also don't want to miss any picks. And then you have to keep up on trades, and it's a very hectic time of year. And again, like we said, Nashville's going to be crazy. They have 9 picks. So let's just walk through real quick the picks that Nashville has as of now. 22nd overall first round pick. We're going to talk about that in today's episode. In the second round, they have 53rd overall, 55th, and 59th overall. The 53rd pick is part of that Tanner Jeannot haul. How you feel about that one, Tampa Bay?
We got like a whole draft class for him. That was great.
I feel like Barry Trotz needs like a fanny pack to carry all the picks into the sphere in that Tanner Jeannot brought. And the 59th pick was a pick that the Preds got from Winnipeg because they took Nino Niederreiter from us.
He did.
Still a little bitter about that one. Third round, 2 picks in the third round. Is that correct? Yes, 87 and 94. The fourth round, they have pick number 99 and pick number 119. Nothing in the 5th or 6th round. So Emma will be taking a quick bathroom break in the 5th and 6th round. And then round 7, 213th pick overall. And that one, that's a little bit of a heartbreaker of a pick for me. That is because we allowed Ryan McDonough to go back to Tampa Bay because Barry Trotz is a great guy. And all that stuff.
Man.
Did have the 215th pick in this year's draft, but I do want to give a shout out for this because that pick was traded to the New Jersey Devils so that David Poile last year could make a final selection in the 7th round here in Nashville, his final selection as a GM. And here is what I have to say, because I am so tickled with this pick and like personally am way over invested. He chose Aiden Frink, who had went on to kill it, my friends, at Penn State University, led the team in points and goals as a freshman on a line with freshmen, absolutely tore it up. So you know that I am going to be wanting to talk to Aiden Frink at Dev Camp, but did give that pick away, but so worth it last year. David Poile went out with a bang with Aiden Frink there.
And we got to, or at least I got to meet Aiden Frink the next week because he was actually at Dev Camp, which no one I don't think would have expected, or people wouldn't have necessarily blamed him for not coming. I think
Right.
7th round pick, and you find out, oh, it's next week, and he still came, and he was so well spoken and just seemed like such a good kid, and he recognized the importance and the magnitude of that pick that he was selected with. You could tell, and it was really cool. I asked him where he was when he found out he had been drafted, and he said he had just walked out of class because he was at school, like summer school at Penn State because of hockey. You know, they have to go to school over the summer. And he was like, yeah, I was just walked out of my class and I had a missed call from my agent and a text from my dad. I was like,
oh, that's so amazing.
That's awesome.
I love that.
And then he was in Nashville the next week for Dev Camp. And then he went back
that.
to Penn State, like you said, and just absolutely tore it up. So
tore it up. I am overly invested in him as a Pennsylvania girl, like where I grew up. When you went to the guidance counselor, the question was not, are you going to college? The question was, have you applied to Penn State? all of the pickup trucks had stickers that said, if God is not a Penn State fan, why is the sky blue and white? Like, this is just the place where I come from. So for me, Aiden Frink, key 7th round pick. Later on this week, we're going to talk about some later round picks, but today we are going to talk about Nashville, that first round pick, what we think they may be doing with that. Before we dive into that real quick, I want to play this quick video from Jeff Kilty, who talks about this year's draft. as, just overarching, he kind of sums up what they see in this draft. This is what Jeff had to say.
I think it's probably average, maybe not quite as good or as deep as last year, but drafts are always deemed as good or bad or deep or what have you. And you can go back years later and there's always players in every draft. So, I think that you always kind of evaluate it, as a whole, and you're always talking about those sorts of things. But every year there's good players to be had in every round. And that's really the goal of the group, to kind of go through that and like I always say, use the whole draft. We have good opportunity with a lot of picks early in the draft, but you never know what can happen with different trade scenarios. You may end up having picks later in the draft that we need to be ready for. So it's a long process, but our guys are really thorough, and I think we always do a good job. So.
Such a huge job. Let me talk about the jobs that I would be so stressed out with, because I think part of evaluating talent at 18 years old, trying to project what are they going to be able to bring to an NHL team at 20, 21, 22, 23, a little bit of wizardry involved. But Jeff Kilty and the entire team that Nashville has, they are ready for this draft. Coming up, Emma and I are also ready for this draft. We're going to talk about that first round pick that Nashville has. We'll tell you who we picked in the Locked On mock draft. And we're going to talk to you about what makes a successful first round draft pick for a team. All that's coming up. First, want to let you know today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Look, I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as these playoffs are winding down, we get fewer and fewer games, and the sports are not sportsing like I'd like them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers, new and old customers, with a boost or a bonus, and they're doing it daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. When we did the mock draft with the Locked On hosts, I thought there was a pretty good pick for us at 22. Do you want to share your pick? Emma was the official picker. That's the title. The official picker.
I got to, in the email, because we did it over email, I got to be like, with the 22nd pick in the 2024 NHL draft, like I felt special for about 30 seconds doing that. Yes. However, I have spent the weekend looking at other publications, mock drafts. And of course, the picks are all over the board for everything beyond number one. Like, it really runs the gamut. So I'm expecting to see a variety of picks projected for the Predators. Not a single other journalist that I have found has made this pick. So I might be.
You heard it here first when it happens.
Yeah. And if it doesn't happen, then I was just kidding. No, I think I still feel good about this pick, even though I might be on an island here. And what's interesting about this pick is he's a guy that I have seen in these mock drafts. At first you think maybe, okay, well, he's not projected to go to the Preds because he's getting drafted earlier. That makes sense. But then I've seen him in some drafts going earlier than 22nd. I've seen him in others going later than 22nd. Right. So it's really like, the draft stresses me out. I don't like it. But the player that we're talking about is Cole Baudouin, and he is one of the, I think he was named, it was either one of the strongest or the strongest prospects in the draft. And that excited me because I was like, ooh, Predators need some size. He's also a center, which is another thing that the Predators need. He plays for the Barrie Colts right now in the CHL. There was actually, his team in Barrie had posted a video of him earlier this year in the gym lifting, and NHL teams reached out and asked if it was fake. Like they thought it was AI
Really?
because he is a horse. Like
He's a lot. There's a lot of hockey player right there.
there is a lot of hockey player. He might be, the fittest, the strongest guy. He can, he maybe is not going to be the most like high octane goal scorer, but he is one of the hardest workers in this draft class, which, that piqued my interest as well with Andrew Brunette and his comments about Phil Thomasino and needing to put in the work and can't just rely on talent. And, it seems like this guy has the work ethic to fit right into that system. He's a fantastic penalty killer. He's a really good defensive forward, which I think is, of course, Predators fans are going to be like, oh, we need more goal scoring. Yes, we do. But I think that if I'm looking at defensive forwards, I'm looking at, one guy we haven't really talked about. Colton Sissons is not getting any younger either.
Right.
If we're talking about the Predators contending in like 4 years, for example, he's going to be 34 years old.
Right.
And I mean, again, he could say Roman Yossi's 34 years old right now. It might mean nothing, but I'm just saying you need to start building up that pipeline, not even just for guys to play alongside your Forsbergs and your Yossis and whatnot, but the guys to, in theory, replace them, because eventually their hockey careers will come to an end. So this is a guy that I really, really, I think that he is tailor-made for an Andrew Brunette type system. Just really, really hard worker. He just stunned, as you can imagine, just blew everyone out of the water at the scouting combine because that's all they do is just working out and stuff. I mean, he's a monster in the gym, and his his trainers, his coaches all speak very highly of him and how dedicated he is to his craft. And, maybe not the fastest guy in the world, but he's a big body. He's strong. He's hard to move off of pucks. And that is something that I think, as I said, fits very well with this system. So with the 22nd pick in the 2024 NHL draft, the Nashville Predators are proud to select Cole Baudouin from Barrie.
Yep. And you heard it here first. No, I really like this pick too, because and everybody's going to say, well, is he going to grow into be a 1C? Here is what is real. 1Cs are elite and hard to come by for a reason. Do I think he is, the next big 1C thing? Likely no. You never know, but likely no. But I think he brings so many great aspects to the game. I love his size. Like you say, his size, his strength, hard to move, hardworking. You love all of these things that you're hearing about him. This is somebody who could be a really important, like, middle six guy for the Nashville Predators, bottom six guy. And while you say, oh, the first round and all they get is like a middle six, bottom six guy, look at the teams that are in the Stanley Cup final. You need quality middle six, bottom six guys. And Nashville, that's an area where the Predators could really stand to add some size. So I
talked about that. We talked about the mushy middle. It's the top line and the fourth line were great this year for the Predators. The middle, I could probably stand to add a guy like him. Again, not that he's going to be cracking the roster next year by any means, but still, like, you get him in your system and get him developing in your system. And, he's a guy, I think, because of his size, that you could see him at the NHL level sooner rather than later. And yeah, I think, he's got some things to work on, like his skating, his speed, but I think that can be done. But yeah, he's a guy that I like. If he is still available, I've seen some
he's been everywhere.
I've seen some mock drafts where he's gone in like the teens. Someone takes him in the teens, and then you're like, okay, well, that's why the Predators don't take him. But then I've seen other ones where he goes at like 24th or 25th. So I think, it's all going to depend on who's available. This draft class is, pretty stacked with quality defensemen, which you could take to mean two different things. Either that's you want to get a defenseman in the first round, or it's like, well, we'll roll the dice on this because there are so many quality
There's more.
defensemen that maybe they'll still be there in the second round. So,
Yeah.
I mean, take from that what you will. I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, prior to last year when the Predators took Tanner Molendyk with their second pick of the first round, they had not selected a defenseman in the first round since Dante Fabro. And so it had been a minute. And
Yeah.
I think that now they're realizing like, oh, this is an area that we need to start, stockpiling again. Especially, in the pipeline. If you're going to have a Spencer Stastny in Nashville next year, if you're going to, I've seen Mark Del Gaizo's name as much as I hate to see it, but I've seen his name linked as part of potential trade packages for Nashville. And I don't know what's going to happen. And I don't want to cross that very heartbreaking bridge until we come to it. But I think that is an area, teams need defensemen. And this, I think, could be a lead into what we're going to talk about next with Martin Necas and things that the Hurricanes are looking for in return. That's a team that needs young defensemen.
And yeah, here sits Nashville. So it does open the door to what we're calling a little bit more rumblings. There's continued conversation about Nashville and Carolina.
Also, listen, y'all, as long as UC Saros remains unsigned to a contract extension in Nashville, the Predators will continue to be quote unquote linked to every single guy on the trade market because they have that very valuable asset potentially.
100%.
And they have the cap space right now because they haven't signed Saros to a long-term extension. So it's just the fact of it. Every single guy that comes available, Necas, Zegras, Marner, Line, like whoever, it's like, oh, Nashville's in the mix. Well, of course they are because they're one of the only teams that could
afford it,
make it happen.
Right.
If they're willing to fork over what the other team would require.
Coming up, we are going to continue diving into that Nashville, Carolina talk. We're also going to look at a couple of picks in the first round that Nashville has made in the past. And what are some 22nd overall picks that we have seen in the NHL? All right, Emma. So talking about this first round draft pick, Nashville again, 22nd pick overall. Just want to throw out some names of players in the NHL who were the 22nd pick overall in their draft class. Hey, Keandre Miller in 2018. Oh, here we go. Nashville fan favorite. This is going to make everyone feel really, really good. In 2021, Montreal, with the 22nd pick overall, selected defenseman Jared Tenorti. Yeah. Jeff Kelty, 22nd pick overall. How about that? But Jordan Eberle, Claude Giroux, Max Pacioretty, you're talking guys who have logged some significant games in the NHL that were the 22nd pick overall. And here is what I will say about the draft in general. It matters where you're picked in the draft for a millisecond or two. And then it's all about what have you done for me lately? And so you have to kind of weigh out, the Predators only have the 22nd pick overall. You can do a lot with a 22nd pick. There are options to move up and down in the draft, but the Predators could still get a pretty good player with this 22nd pick overall. And they've done fairly well. If you look back in the past at the picks that they've had kind of in between that like 18 to 25, 30 range. There's some interesting names here. Austin Watson was the 18th pick overall in 2010. Okay, here's one. This one's gonna age about as well as the whole Jared Tenorti thing. Ellie Tolvanen, 30th overall pick in 2017.
Oh, favorite topic for Preds fans.
Yeah. Hey, I have an idea. Let's throw some more gasoline on that fire. In 2019, the 24th pick was Phil Thomasino.
Let's go. I knew you were going there.
So, but also I will say 2021, 19th overall, Fedor Svechkov. Zachary LaRue was 27th in 2021. So still some players in that range that Nashville is still waiting to see, like, where does their development process lead them? Emma, just in general, what makes a pick a quote successful draft pick for you? Like, is there criteria where, like, hey, if we're picking a guy in the first round, he's got to be a top 6 guy. He's got to be a top 4 defensive guy. Or does that not matter as much?
I don't know that it does, because again, for all the reasons that we've just said, like, it's so hard to predict that from a 17 or 18-year-old kid. Like, you don't know. And again, if you're not picking in like the top 3, you're not picking a guy that you want to make an impact on your roster next year.
Right.
You know, it's not the NFL. Like, we're not going to see these kids for a few years. And I think that's why I think you have to look overall. You can't get too specific with it. You can't be like, okay, we need a top 6 forward or whatever. Because if you look at, and I'm not saying that this is what the Predators were saying at the time, but I'm thinking, for example, they draft a guy like Igor Afanasyev. They maybe weren't saying this when he was drafted, like, oh, he needs to be a top 6 forward, but that was certainly the expectation.
Correct.
And that is obviously not, he can very well be a top 6 forward, just not in this organization right now. And we talked about that on yesterday's show. So I think that you have to look more at the needs of the organization overall, and you know, what gaps they fill there. You are kind of restocking your pipeline there. And so that's what I think you need to, and there are just so many things at play. Like, are they coachable? How much of it is, you know, he's not there yet, but he'll get there, or we don't think he'll ever get there, or, you know, whatever it is. And I think you just have to look again. Organizational need is going to be the biggest thing. Again, I go back to Afanasyev. He could go to San Jose and he could be a top 6 forward on that roster today. But
True.
He just wasn't there in Nashville, and that's okay. But that's why I think you can't get too hung up on, you know, the placement and the lineup and things like that. I think you need to look at the organization as a whole, and that's a tall task, but it's a lot of depth, and you got to look at starting to plug those holes.
Yeah. I think too, it's important when you draft someone. And again, I feel like the number and the ranking counts for just milliseconds of these young men's careers, but you want somebody that's going to kind of hold their value. And when I say that, I think of somebody like Phil Thomasino, because Phil Thomasino is a player very much, I think, like Igor Afanasyev, where other franchises may feel that's somebody that's going to be a fit for us. Might not be a fit right here in Nashville for whatever reason. And I'm not speaking that over Phil Thomasino. I'm just, you know, using him as an example. But this is still a young player with upside that maybe doesn't fit in this system perhaps right now for Nashville, but he has trade value. Phil Thomasino is valuable to the Nashville Predators still. So I think there's an element of that as well. Like, even just that they continue to develop their own individual games. Like you said, if it doesn't land them with this franchise, they still have a, you know, value as a trade piece, or, you know, as a part of a package too. So I think it's just about continuing their development process. And you talked about, are they coachable? Are they going to get injured? I mean, there's so many factors that go into what happens in the next 3 years after the draft to factor into this as well. Do want to pivot real quick so we can talk about this before we wrap up our show. The Natchez to Nashville. First of all, that's a great t-shirt. If it happens, there should be swag. Natchez to Nashville, kind of heating up, pot stirring a little bit. On the fourth period, they're talking about, like, hey, this is one of those partnerships that we're still keeping an eye on. Is Nashville in on Natchez? We've talked about it on previous episodes, but just to summarize, Emma, is this a yes for you? Is this a no? Is this a perhaps for you?
Well, first of all, I just got to say, if we're looking at recent history for the Carolina to Nashville pipeline, the outcome hasn't been great, because you've ended up with Nino Niederreiter and myself, and neither of us lasted Well, Nino didn't last a full season. I didn't last 2 full seasons with the
But we
Predators.
love you both, so there is value.
Okay, so yeah, so we kept our value. That,
You
like
did.
you
You
said, we
kept your
kept our
value. Learn Phil Thomasino.
Yes. So if I would hope that if the Preds are gonna try and go get a guy like Natchez, that they're trying to hold on to him for more than a year or 2.
Yeah.
But his name again, he's one of those guys that Carolina's made it clear they're shopping his rights, and but they're also aware of how valuable he is, and there are certainly teams out there that will overpay for a guy like him. He still, to me, is not a slam dunk. You got to go get this guy. I think just because he will get overpaid. I mean,
Right.
that's
He
fine,
will.
but I don't think that the Predators should be in that business, and Barry Trotz doesn't want to be in that business. But looking at what was said on the 4th period specifically, it was that there obviously a lot of rumblings again about Nashville having sort of the inside track on that one because they still have Saros as a tradable asset. But it even said, in that context, it would, that for the Predators to have an advantage there, they would have to include Saros in a deal there. And that's not something that I necessarily foresee happening. And he also mentioned that an extension for Saros would look, and we've known this for a while, it's probably going to look a lot like Connor Hellebuck, $8.5 million for probably, I would think it probably about 6 years at least.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
And I know that kind of number and that kind of term probably scares Barry Trotz. He doesn't want to, made it clear he doesn't want to do that. I think it's smarter you spend that money on Saros. I think you're going to get more value from him because Natchez, if he gets overpaid now, and then he'll be up for a contract extension in however many years, and forwards get paid more. So
Right.
I think that he could end up costing you more. And I'm not just trying to make it all about the finances, but I do think that there's definitely. I still think this is a case of the Predators are still featured as heavily in these conversations as they are because Saros remains unsigned to an extension right now.
Right. They have the biggest chip in the deal out there right now. We've seen a couple of other goaltenders move. Saros is still out there. Carolina's interested in this. I'm with you though. I know it's not all about money, and I'm okay with Nashville paying some big bucks for the right player at the right time. I'm just not sure it's the right time yet for Nashville to fork over a big contract. Coming up on tomorrow's show, Emma and I are going to take a look at some of those mid-round picks. Where has Nashville landed with some of their previous mid-round picks? And, could they find themselves a little gem in the 2nd and 3rd round? We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. Before we sign off, though, Emma, let everyone know, where can they find you? Where can they find your work?
They can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at ANK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio. That's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with more draft talk. We'll see you then.